What's up?
Hello, and welcome to
Hello.
Monthly Minutes!
Come on, window. There you go. Now your captions are there.
What?
The captions were blocked by a window I had open.
Oh, no.
Okay, now they're there. Hello.
Okay. Hello, how's it going?
It's going all right. I just got off of work. I went from my chair right there to my chair right here. But we made it.
Nice. This is quite the journey.
That is so far. I drank all my water on the way.
You didn't even go. Oh, man. Well, welcome in, everyone. Hello. Welcome to Monthly Minutes. I guess we didn't ask. Are we co-hosting? Did you want me to take the lead on hosting this one? It's best for us to figure this out live in front of people instead of...
Take it away, my friend.
Okay. Well, welcome. We've entered a party. We've had some revelations, and then we had a huge lore dump. So let's hop in the
Should we tell
podcast. But I
people-
guess before we hop in, maybe we should know who we are.
Yes.
Do you want to introduce yourself in case anyone is new here?
Yeah, what's up, everyone? Welcome to Monthly Minutes. This is our monthly talk show where we talk about all things Utopia Podcast. We share the behind the scenes, what we're thinking, what we're planning, all the juicy stuff. My name's Siera. I'm the DM. So this is a great session. If you're into DMing behind the scenes info that I can share, I will try and share. My name is Mystic, aka Siera. I use she, any pronouns. And I am the owner / founder of Autumn Studio. You can catch me here. My book dropped this week. That's insane. You can find my collection of short stories wherever you find your books. It's called We May Not All Be Heroes. Yeah. Who are you?
Yeah, go pick up Mystic's book. It's awesome. It's cool. It gives you so much insight into this story, and will have you looking at these characters and being like, oh my god. That's that character. That's them, and the party just ignored them. How could they? Anyway, I'm Adam. He, him. I go by Fondue Rage on various channels, and I play Godfrey in the podcast. I DM home games, and I'm playing in a lot of D&D. I do a lot of D&D.
A lot of gaming.
I did not hear you at all, and I'm sorry.
A lot of games.
A lot of games.
We're off the rails
Yeah.
already. I hope everyone is having fun. If you're listening, we're gonna answer your questions in the chat as they pop up. So feel free to ask them. We'll answer.
Because if you don't, then I have to ask all the questions. And I mean, I can. I have a lot of questions. I don't think many of them can be answered.
I'll try.
Okay, so now that we've properly introduced the show and ourselves and all of that very important stuff, now let's hop in. Episode 19. It's a party, right?
It's a party, right?
So this episode starts off at the end of Morgus's nightmare. Specifically with Morgus being entrenched into a war, being asked if he remembers the plan, and then rushing off towards a particular Goliath fellow that we've seen or assume that Morgus has seen himself as in some flashbacks that he's had recently. So is this all just like insane lore drops within the dreamscape? Is this some sort of like, is this veiled? Is there a layer of like falsehood here? Well, thank you so much, Chelsea. I appreciate that you came in and hung out.
Yeah, thank
Even
you
if
so
you
much.
can't stay very long.
These are lore drops. There are lore drops for the listeners. There are lore drops for Daniel. What was the second part of the question?
Or like, has everything been just kind of twisted by the fact that it is in a nightmare form? Like, is this true lore or is this kind of false lore? Like misleading in some way.
I think that everything everyone experienced had truth to it. I certainly didn't lie about anything. I'll say that.
Yeah.
I didn't intentionally try to mislead or provide any red herrings in the nightmares. I was mostly just trying to terrify you all with your own nightmares that you sent me via Discord chat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds good. So,
and Morgus's specifically, I think I got to dive into more of the lore dump inherently, because it's really funny the way that dreams have to do with memory, right? Like sometimes you'll have a dream about something that you, after you dream it, you know that it happened, but you didn't. It's not like a conscious part of something that you remember or a story you tell, you know?
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, dreams are funny and super interesting, and are probably, to go back to a way earlier question from like months ago that you asked me. At some point you asked me what's my DM crutch, and it's dream sequences.
Oh.
If I need my party to know something, they have a dream about something.
Interesting.
And then I get to play with, oh, does this dream mean anything? Or am I just going to be a logical person and ignore that dream?
Yeah. Cool.
Nice one. And so we come out of that dream sequence and we enter the party proper, where we learn that things are a little wonky. And we keep relearning that, because as a party, we need to be 100% sure that things work exactly the way we think they work. And we cannot make any assumptions.
Mm-hmm.
My whole takeaway from that, because like immediately going in, Ziba gets the first scene, wins the initiative roll, and is like, I'm hungry, I look for food. And you're like, oh yeah, you focus on food and find food.
Mm-hmm.
Then Morgus is like, oh, I want some scones. Oh, Ziba's cart isn't there anymore, but now suddenly there's a scones table there. It's like, oh, go get scones. Like, okay, yep, we've clued in. Some weird things are happening in this dream world. Some weird realm stuff happening. And there's listening back, there's a really funny interaction that happens between Morgus and Ziba, where Ziba comes back and says, I have all this food, it's right over there, and then it's gone. And Morgus makes a comment of, that's rude to someone who just woke up, which is really funny coming from Morgus, who has relentlessly targeted Ziba with food mistaste prestidigitation first thing in the morning for like the last 2 weeks of the campaign. Yeah.
There's like a mild amount of gaslighting in that comment, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just thought that was really funny. And then we go into this interesting scene between Livy and Livy's sire, who I believe is named Mary.
Mary, right? Yes.
I don't think Mary's name drops until like way late into that episode when Mary shows up. So we learn a couple things from Mary, some like big lore clues kind of to what's happening in the party and what's happening with Livy. And as a party collectively, we've missed one part of it, which I DM'd you about like a month later.
Yeah.
When I was thinking about this episode.
Yeah.
And it's, there's this fact that Livy comes in and claims that she was sired by Nyx. And then Mary is the sire of Livy, but Livy is a Maya vampire, or a Maya Dampier. So there's a lot of questions that now come into play with that, especially because later on in, I think, episode 21, we get the reveal that Nyx is kind of this deity of shapeshifters, as well as being a deity of vampires and werewolves. So I think there's a big question.
Oh, we lost Adam! Where'd he go? Got booted off. Oh.
Yeah.
You're back.
You're back! Huzzah!
I heard was the original sire of vampires and shapeshifters, and then you just blooped.
Oh, Nyx does not want us to talk about this anymore. We will move on.
Yeah. You're not wrong on any of those facts. I don't even think that Ed has put together these things yet.
Yeah.
Because in season 1, when you all were in Maya's grove, Maya was like, "You're one of mine." And Mary very clearly states that Nyx was her sire. And Ed believes that Mary is his sire, Livy's sire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's a lot of... That brings up so much weird shenanigans that I don't know if this is just part of Ed's backstory and Livy's backstory that just hasn't been revealed to us yet. Or if there's like something weird going on there with that not being the real Mary, or like what's happening there. And I'm really excited to explore that.
Yeah.
Going forward.
I mean, question back to you in regards to Mary. I know that Ed has said like above table in some conversations, like the connection to Mary and little like hints about the type of person that she is. But I feel like members of the party had really strong reactions to Mary. And I'm curious if those are colored by those above table conversations with Edward, or if I really did play her as that much of a hateable character.
I don't think you've played Mary as a strictly hateable character. I think there's a lot that we don't know about Mary. And there's, at least for Godfrey, just like some context clues about Mary. But the way Godfrey's acting towards Mary is more a reaction to how Livy's reacting to Mary. So I don't think Godfrey inherently has anything, like, doesn't have any reason to distrust or not like Mary.
Yeah.
Right? Because all he's encountered are the things that Livy said to him in person, which are like pretty vague and like explicit enough to know that that's where Livy got to where he is today, but not enough to really know the person.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he's reacting in such like a visceral, like, get away from me kind of way that it's easy to like step in and kind of read that context clue and be like, we're going to hang out. Like, he's with us. If you want to do something, like, you could hang around or whatever. Just like, we're going to be here too.
Yeah.
Kind of deal.
I almost thought, or I know we're jumping way ahead. I almost thought about having Mary try to follow you all.
Yeah.
But it's not something she would do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, I have to apologize. All the rich ass people who commute to inner Seattle from the islands fly planes. And they're all flying home from work right now. So that's all the plane noise that y'all are hearing.
I haven't heard any yet.
Oh, good. That's good.
But now I'm going to be listening for them. So now I'll know.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then Mary in this conversation also drops one other big, like, little big lore tidbit there. And that's saying that 3 of our party are already attached to various gods, 1 on one side and 2 on another. That Mary was hoping that she could bring Livy to a side to kind of even those kinds of odds.
Mm-hmm.
Which is interesting, considering how Morgus is acting in the next couple of episodes.
It is, yeah.
Because we can make a big assumption, and I'm taking a big leap here. Right?
Yeah, swing
or
big,
like
baby.
Go
for it.
Maybe not so big of a leap. So I know that Godfrey has been somewhat forcefully attached to Nyx.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm under the assumption that Godfrey is on the one side because Mary wants to bring someone else to even odds. And if there's 1 on one side and 2 on another side, and Mary's trying to bring someone to my side, I have to imagine the 2 are on the other side.
Yeah.
Now, what the other side means, I think our party has misconstrued, and we'll get into that in episode 21, because I think it's been pretty clearly stated to us by NPCs that our original assumptions about that are incorrect. So I have to breathe. I'm in full like chaos mode. Like I just need my whiteboard and
the
like my
strings are
corkboard
going.
and my strings. Yeah. So
yeah, you got it.
yeah, so we can assume that I'm attached to Nyx.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're making an assumption that Scylla is connected to my Siera or to some entity that's in cahoots with my Siera. Because what Scylla is connected to is still kind of a mystery, because it is still distinctly not what my Mysherian worship is, but we don't know yet if that's because she's worshiping like an old Mysteria way or if she's doing something completely different. And she drops a bunch of hints there that, you know, to look beyond the veil, I have worked out. A couple of people have worked out, but Godfrey absolutely has not and will not.
Yeah.
So he has his assumptions. I'm going to keep playing it like that. Because, wow, I can't wait to see how that story fleshes itself out. But great storytelling from Liz in playing Scylla. And it's one of those things where I wish that we have like all of the extra stuff that we have as players just like in the hands of the audience too.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like there's enough there. There's enough there that if you're keeping notes. Oh. Anyway. So assume that's there. And then we have the mystery, which I'm putting on it being Morgus, right? Because it's either Morgus or it's Ziba, being the last member of the party that's affiliated with the god. And Ziba has really only been affiliated with her spirit guardians as anything like even relatively close to divinity. Whereas Morgus is a big question mark onto, is he like a resurrected champion of a god? We've had a lot of references to Sol, right? The name of the god in the pantheon that he's the big... Oh, I want to call them elephants, but they're not elephants. That's Lord of the Rings. Loxodons. Thank you. And so that'd be interesting because that puts distinctly Sol on the side of Mysteria, which is opposite to where Medusa and Erebus are, which makes this interaction happening interesting, seeing as Morgus is so close to them. Like, and tying that into the nightmare, like, is Morgus some sort of just like cruel double agent, reincarnated body snatcher that's just like going from person to person? It's like getting information and then losing it because that information is being sent to someone and he's being wiped clean so he can't be outed as this double agent.
Whoa. That would have to be someone who really knew how the afterlife worked and like be really powerful.
Yeah. Which, I mean, we learned a lot about the afterlife in episode 21 as well.
Yes,
So,
but we're not there yet. I think we were on Livy and Mary talking to each other.
This was that whole tangent because we had the 3 attached to other gods. So now we have that, which is why that whole tangent was interesting, because that puts Morgus in a certain basket and makes Morgus's interactions in later episodes more confusing, but also more interesting into like where that story is being told and how that's being told. Anyway, we move on. Mary says a couple things, trying to get Livy to the side, like to be with Godfrey forever, helping in the fight. And then we learned that Livy was turned shortly after both of his parents had passed away, which I don't think is any part of lore that Livy has confided in anyone in the party yet. Like, we just know that Livy is this Dampier professor who had this vampire fling that he like walked out of halfway through. So that's also an interesting new part of his backstory that I can't wait to dive into. And then these oil creatures keep coming up, which they get a specific name that I didn't write down in my re-notes.
Narbil the Bogle.
Narbil the Bogle. which is referenced to so many times that I can't help but think that we as a party saw you giving this to us, and then just went, I have no idea why we're supposed to pay attention to this. Like, all of us heard it. We were all like, that's great. Oil. Wonderful. What's that over there?
Yeah.
So did you expect, like, is this Bogle important? Did we just completely miss something that we were supposed to go follow into or track down?
It doesn't need immediate action. No.
That's a strong non-answer right there. That's a strong, yeah, you were supposed to look into it, party. I'm not mad. I'm just a little disappointed.
No, it's mostly there for putting clues together.
I have no idea where that clue fits in or what puzzle we're looking at for that. So
that's cool. Let's keep talking. Maybe you'll put it together while we're talking. Because all the information is on the table at this point. It's just what pieces I need to start hitting you all over the heads with that I need to deduce.
I don't understand why the Bogle is important. I don't understand why this oil creature is here and why everyone's just kind of cool with it. You know what? It's a world of dreams. So I'm as a player and as a character tempted to be like, oh, that's just a dream thing. Mm-hmm. We don't have to pay attention to that. That's just kind of weird.
It could be. Yeah. No one has been intrigued enough by Narbil to like do a nature check or investigate them or, you know, try and figure out if they know what they are.
But I feel like Livy distinctly was like, do I know what that is? And did get those checks in the episode.
I think I made him roll a perception check to see whether or not he stepped in the oil.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know we talked about the Bogles a couple times with a couple people. It was just like, okay, he's just a guy. There might be more than one of him.
We don't know.
Just call him Narvel.
They're just all Narvel.
He's just a troublemaker.
Stealing babies and putting them in the snow.
Yeah. Then Scylla went to the snow looking for drugs, but found children playing with snow. And then Scylla had this like weird moment where she enters a snowball fight with children, which is baffling to me. Like, I'm trying.
Me too.
I'm like, is this the same Scylla who like gave away my gold because I asked her to hold hands with a child and bring them home? Like, is this like character development? Is this like a defense response to what happened in the nightmare Scylla was having? So I'm just like, man, I wish any member of the party was there to see and or react to that, because that was a very interesting choice that I'm like really curious about, even though it's like such a small thing. It's just a part of Scylla that we don't typically see like fleshed out. And then Scylla does find the hard drugs because she wills it, and then we learn that the hard drugs have no effect. Or like the hard contraband. We used weird language for it to avoid saying
material.
Illicit materials. For some reason, to avoid saying drugs. I don't know. It was the vibe that day. We all reconvene after that. Livy tells us to stay away from his sire, that she's no good, that we shouldn't talk to her, and we're all like, okay, we won't talk to your sire. We'll respect you, Livy. Godfrey has a moment of being a vague, disappointed father figure when Ziba is talking with her mouth full, and he just kind of calls her out on it. We realize that hunger isn't being satiated, the drugs aren't working, that overall something's pretty bad in this weird dream thing. And then there was a sign-up thing that happens, and we find Carling's mother, who looked real bad.
Real bad.
And that's the end of episode 19.
Yeah.
Roll into episode 20. Did you have anything you wanted to point out that I didn't point out about episode 19? Are there any other like big things that you wish we would have latched on to that we maybe didn't?
I don't know about that. I do want to point out, I've had a lot of fun with this, the worlds colliding experience, almost, of like, you're in an empty field and then it miraculously fills full of satyrs and there's someone on a stage that wasn't there before yelling at you. And then, like, they're all there for all the signups, and then they just all disappear again until they're all back dancing. And it's just sort of like that's just another one of those things that, like, I've described that y'all have just been like, yeah, that's just what happens here.
Yeah, because it's a dream world,
I know,
right?
it's so absurd and
that's
awesome.
just the way things have been happening. But then, we get a drop over episode 21 again, where it's like, oh yeah, I really had a hard time being here. It was in chaos. There were realms open to all of the multiverse, and we think we closed them all. Like, oh, okay. Maybe that should recontextualize the way we're looking at a lot of these weird things that we're seeing here. But, maybe not. It's like, I feel like that's a hard thing
Narbil.
to play. What's that?
Like maybe Narbil.
Yeah, like maybe Narbil. Maybe Narbil's from the weird oil dimension. The elemental plane of oils. Grease.
Ew.
Sorry.
No, it's great.
Yeah, I feel like that's a really hard thing to do if you're running a dream realm as a DM, to be running like this. Something's not right in the dream world, because we have no context for what should be right in the dream world.
Oh yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
So right now we're just going to run with the assumption that everything is happening exactly the way it should be until, like, we're told explicitly that something is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll see if that hat drops. But yeah, episode 20, who will be the victor? Some interesting things happen in this episode. Some questions I distinctly want to ask you about.
Okay.
As they play out as we go through there. It starts out with kind of a goofy conversation happening in who will be the victor, where Ziba is talking to the satyr that showed up in the inn. From our famous line of, you'll win a consenting satyr lady,
Mm-hmm.
or person, where it's like, what did the children do? What if you don't go that way? And he's like, oh, I don't know, maybe you just, like, get a voucher for a consenting individual for, like, when you're old enough. I was like, I missed that in the moment. I was like, what the fuck is that? Holy shit. What? It's so strange. Then I was like, oh yeah, just like,
Mm-hmm.
we keep going on. Scylla does one of her boops.
Channel divinity.
Divine Sense.
Mm-hmm. Divine Sense.
Where she finds the demon angels that take dreams to the mortal realm.
Mm.
Those are interesting. And they're there.
And they
It's
are
like, huh.
there.
Yeah, that's another thing where it's like, yeah, that's just a thing that's here.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to ask any more questions about those. Those will stay in the sky. We will not interact with them anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Which, like, I feel like that one, more so than the Boggle, is more intentional.
Mm-hmm.
Like, maybe that's just more of a world building. Like, these things are here, and that's how this world works. We'll see if we come back around to that in the dream realm at any time.
That one is 100% more intentional. It's like, fuck around and find out kind of a intention.
Yeah. Okay. It's like, this is the punishment if you mess up here.
Fuck around and find out. Yeah.
And then we start signing up for events. And Ziba, Livy, and Scylla all sign up for events really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And then Morgus and Godfrey are kind of like, well, should we? Godfrey, I could say, is coming from a perspective of, like, he knows that he's here for a different reason. He knows he wasn't invited here for this reason. He was a VIP. He doesn't know if he's supposed to sign up for events. Like, he doesn't know if that's rude or not.
Yeah.
And one of Godfrey's, like, key core values is to not be rude. Like he's polite to everyone until they've made a reason for him to not be polite to them. Right? And then Morgus is hesitating because we're not sure if we could save any of these people who are here seemingly competing for their lives and failing every time. And then as we're going through this, we talk with a satyr who's like, oh yeah, satyrs just always win here. Like they always win, like no matter what. We're like, that's a little weird. But you know, I guess it makes sense. There's like thousands of satyrs and not a whole lot of non-satyrs. Like maybe this is just a chance thing. And so we talk about that, and then immediately after that, you have both Morgus and I make an intelligence saving throw to see if we remember this person saying that satyrs only win. I feel like this froze both Daniel and I in the role play in this moment. Because at that point, we're like, why are we making a saving throw for this? Is this now a hard rule that you're trying to enforce on us as a DM? Just to be like, hey, like, this is what's happening. And then there's like a weird distinction that happens there, because now that's kind of like a meta knowledge, because we don't know that our characters just made a second save for that. So like, is that supposed to change the way we role play this? Like, so there was a moment of like friction that happens there. So I'm wondering if you could give a little more insight into what that role was for and what like your intention for that is for us as players.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's pretty obvious that Carling's mother, whose name is Elle, and the Dragonborn don't realize that they have no way to win. It's an inherent part of this place that people who join that are not satyrs do not remember that they are not allowed to win. And so the intelligence saving throw was to see if even in this small amount of time, that magic had taken a hold of Godfrey and Morgus's mind. I haven't had anyone else roll yet because y'all haven't been there all that long. It's one of those things where like the longer you are, the less you know about that, if that makes sense. It's a trap.
The trap? This place? Okay, that's interesting to know, because like even in re-listening to it, I never got the sense anywhere that we were told that we're just strictly not allowed to win.
Well, no, absolutely not. You just
Sorry,
can't.
I could not.
You just can't win.
You just can't win.
Yeah.
It's not that you're not allowed to, you just can't.
Well, I mean, I know that you're not allowed to win, but you all just think that you can't win.
Okay, so we weren't told that we're not allowed to win. So we couldn't have forgotten something that we don't even know.
I think you all put it together, though, right? Like
We put it together, but
how
it's
do
all
we like
kind of wild speculation to getting there,
yeah.
right? Because we're all speculating now, like, oh, maybe this place is rigged against us and we can't win. It's kind of that idea that we ended up coming to, but we have no way to reaffirm this because we haven't been able to look at games yet. None of them have gone on, but
yeah,
it's good to know because we got into that moment, and I think both of us were hesitating. I was hesitating because I wasn't going to have Godfrey enter because I thought you had to enter to get out.
I mean,
And Morgus wasn't entering, so Godfrey ended up entering, but I don't think he signed any paperwork. He just said he was going to.
yeah, he didn't enter because he didn't actually sign up. Turn my mic up. Hopefully that helps.
That does. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think there are just moments where we're talking and laughing, and then it just like leans back just a little bit, and then you get out of that sweet spot. Okay, so we get through that. Then Scylla goes and talks to some other people who are there. Reveals that Scylla's from Mortworth. The first time we learn where Scylla's originally from. The guy responds that it's like a nice little art town, which is more context to Mortworth because we've never been there. I thought that was interesting. And then Scylla tries to find out how they got there, and these individuals says they got a book from a wagon that came through town that day, but then denied that they ever read a book in the first place. It's curious and something I haven't looked into by looking through that list of old or new gods, because I have my own theories. Because a big part of this is Morgus trying to figure out what the common thread between everyone who's been invited here is, the people who are here versus the satyrs who are here. And he had the idea that as soon as you heard about this place and started seeking it, then you got the invitation to come here. Where I kind of have this extra working theory that maybe it's when you interact with a god in some way, you get an invite here, unless you are a natural born satyr. But we don't know enough yet. I just took that because I thought it was weird about the books and them forgetting or purposely lying about having said it the first time. I don't think any insight checks were made to see if that was a lie or genuine misremembering.
Yeah.
It's an interesting interaction. Shortly after that, Ziba hears her satyr friend going sha 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 sha, but then doesn't see them, and no one else hears it. I think.
Yeah.
Which is curious. But then Ziba plays it off, and so we play it off. And then Margaret the tree comes over to us. Obviously over there. Garakias speaks to everyone in the party for the first time, and Bitsy gets insufferably jealous, tells Morgus to tell everyone else that Bitsy can also speak, and then Morgus refuses to say so, and that's a really funny interaction where Bitsy gets a little bit of attitude, and it is really funny.
Yeah.
Mary shows up as we're leaving, asks for a dance, and Livy immediately shuts that down. And is like, nope, we're gonna go.
Stance between her and Ziba and like protection mode.
Yeah. Also interesting. But makes sense with the information that Mary had given him beforehand. That Mary wants to turn the tides with someone in the party, and that means it's him or Ziba. So that is a cool, like, small moment of storytelling there that just moves on. And then we get into Medusa's cabin, and Medusa is, I think, not what any of us expected Medusa to be.
Why?
Because I feel like everyone in the party was ready for, like, some kind of showdown or some kind of monologue or some kind of just, like, more standoffish, just like, I'm in control here kind of energy. Just kind of based, I think, on the initial, like, sending crystal ball thing that Godfrey got from Medusa a couple weeks ago. And from, like, the dreams that both Livy and Ziba have had of Medusa in the past. I think there's this expectation that Medusa was going to be something else. And we were all caught a little off guard when Medusa was instead this, oh, I'm going to put on my blindfold. Come inside, don't look at me.
Don't look at me.
Some tea. Oh, you brought friends? Oh, they weren't invited, but that's fine. They could be here. I'm sure you're all not going to ambush me while I'm blind in my apartment. I'm not even afraid of that, and that's not terrifying to you all at all.
Was that scary for you?
A little bit.
Really?
You know, there's a little bit of a moment, just I guess in Godfrey's mindset, right? Because Godfrey was a soldier, Godfrey was in, like, war and in conflict, and he's sitting in this room with someone who is purposely keeping themselves blind, and then just willingly inviting this group of 5 people who have very differing goals into her house, and is not the least bit, like, hesitant or concerned about it. All of her concern is just her making sure that she doesn't hurt everyone else, which is really intimidating.
Wow.
But, you know,
I never thought of it that way.
Yeah. Also good on us for not having someone in the party who's just like, we could do this right now. Like,
yes.
she's kind of defenseless right now. She's got a blindfold on. 5 of us?
You guys didn't even, like, try to steal anything or, like, rummage around. It was nothing. It was just like, Morgus will help make tea. Scylla stands there at the doorway, arms crossed, not talking at all. Ziba sits on the floor.
Yeah. We're too good. We're too nice.
You are a very nice party. That is true.
We are a very nice party. Then that's all I have for episode 20. We learned more about the oil creature in episode 20 as well, but we talked about that a bit. recapping episode 19. Is there anything else you wanted to add about episode 20? Anything that I might have missed that was important?
I don't think so. I do have a question for you.
What's that?
What did you think of Margaret?
So I had a very different image of what Margaret was in description as opposed to the picture that was later posted in Discord.
Yeah.
So in my mind, Margaret's this, just like a treant, like a normal treant. But in reality, Margaret is this sickly green ooze dripping, just demented looking treant.
With 5 eyes.
What's that?
With 5 eyes.
With 5 eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And I somehow missed that description entirely, both initially and also in the revisit listening to the episode. Because something in my mind heard tree walking towards me and then just shut down the rest of the descriptors. Because my mind took control. And I feel like that's happened a couple of times here in the Nightmare world. So, another thing that happened in this episode that I forgot to point out is we got to a point where when we were signing up, you pointed out that it was nighttime. And then we were all like, when did it become nighttime? And you said it's been night the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And in my mind, when we entered this dream world, it was midday sunshine picnic.
Mm-hmm.
And it just had never turned from that into nighttime. And then getting the description that it was always nighttime just really threw me off. So I was like, what? How?
Yeah, I've been sort of trying to use those kinds of nightmarish things as a form of storytelling in the way that even me as a DM and explaining the world around you can sometimes be a little bit of an untrustable narrator, if that makes sense. I mean, this whole domain is a domain of dread, right? I ripped the pages out of Ravenloft and made my own domain of dread, right? Yeah. And the whole thing about this plane is misdirection, manipulation, and trapping.
Okay.
And so it's been really interesting. No one asked what day it was. I described a wide open glen with trees all around. And I'm not saying you have to ask for those things, but I've enjoyed some of those tiny little speckles of oh, this place is fucked up. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Those things are good too. It was just we haven't had our vision impaired at all from it being night. There was no description of lights being on to help us see. There was
Yeah.
So but it's cool to know that is intentional. Cool to know. It's gonna make me want to be Godfrey takes a very active perception check right now. So he wants to know what time of day it is.
I mean, if we want to get down into the very specifics, when you all went to sleep, or when everyone else went to sleep and entered the nightmare realm, it was sort of this weird divide in the sky between dusk and day.
Yeah.
And the dusk is what's perpetual. So it doesn't inhibit sight. There's still enough light to see. It's just a perpetual dusk, if that makes sense. Night was easier to say, though, in the moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So it's perpetual sunset.
Mm-hmm. Without all the colors. It's just grim.
Got it. Okay, now let's all take a deep breath and maybe do a quick stretch before we get into episode 21.
Anyone have any questions?
What's that?
Questions for the chat? Put them in the chat, friends.
Yeah. Chat has any questions, please.
Something
Oh my gosh. Okay.
All right.
So let's go through this episode of just reveal after reveal after reveal after reveal of lore points and character moments.
You finally got to have a conversation with a god.
We did. We finally got to sit down and have an actual conversation with a god. And they were gods and didn't care about what they gave us. And, There's a level where we have to, as characters and as people, look at what they've said to us and be like, is this real or is this another misdirection? Are we being openly lied to, or is this all like truth? So a lot of things come out here.
Yeah.
So we learned that Medusa doesn't look like she did initially in Ziba's interaction. Like specifically, both Livy and Ziba get an intelligence save to be like, this is a different looking Medusa than the one you encountered in your initial dream. And this is also a weird setup and a weird situation because these characters are all having these interactions and we're in a state where we can't like communicate that to each other. So we're sitting on a lot of information character by character basis that we can't pool together yet. So we'll keep going. Medusa reveals that Godfrey accepted to become Nyx's champion in front of the rest of the party, in which Livy uses many allusions to be like, what the fuck, we gotta talk about this. Like, what is happening? Yeah. He was like, oh, I used an illusion that just says, we need to talk.
Oh, yes. I think I was like deep in the DM brain at that point. I missed a lot of that, but I vaguely remember that from editing. Yeah.
And then, like, shortly after that, Medusa says something like, oh, I'm going to ask you questions. Is that okay? And I said, I'm an open book. And then Livy used illusion to say, are you? In the background as well. Some pretty funny moments there.
Yeah.
It is revealed to us that we can't sleep or rest while within this domain. And I'll get through the rest of this, but this is a big kind of like DM talk, like moment that I want to talk to you about. Because I've seen this played in several ways and I'm interested to see how you're feeling about it so far, but we'll get into that afterwards. We learned that Nyx was responsible for vampires, werewolves, and other shapeshifters, which I said a bit earlier here. We learned that gods had become gods and that specifically Nyx, Medusa, Myceria, Sturt, Rosara, and Novos were all granted godhood.
All became gods at the same time.
All became gods at the same time. It did not say became gods at the same time in the episode.
Okay.
The question was, did you become gods?
Yeah.
What's that?
Do you know what I said exactly?
The question was, how did he become gods? The answer was like, oh, we've all become gods. And we're like, who's become gods? She's like, oh, me and Nyx and Myceria and Sturt and Rosara. And then there's this new person called Novos. And it was not stated that they all became gods simultaneously, just that they had all become gods.
Yeah.
I believe. I could go and re-listen to that section.
That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah. I have no... Oh, yeah, that's what that means. We talk a little bit about why they're gathering an army, and we learn that in Medusa's eyes, they're gathering an army for self-preservation, that the other gods are trying to wipe them out, and they're raising an army to fight back against the other gods who are trying to destroy them. Which we ask about a lot, and we question why they think this is the greater good, and we get a lot of kind of dodgy answers to that. A lot of like, oh, this is the right thing. There was a big back and forth that happens between why Arudi was on the side of Nyx and of Medusa, with an assumption coming from Livy that they were on opposite sides because he's an old god and she's a new god. And she says, depends on who you ask, I guess, in response to Arudi is an old god, which is very curious to whether or not Arudi is like double dipping in godhood here. It's kind of like an extra god or a god plus. We learned then that there's the tear across the multiverse and that Arudi had to like really work to come back and like claim this place and like seal the holes. Medusa drops a lot of stuff about how souls work and how death works, which is mind crushing to someone like Godfrey, who has just been a human until like 2 months ago.
And
is
also
now,
Morgus,
yeah,
right?
and also Morgus. Like huge implications for Morgus as a character too. It's just like, oh yeah, no, when the body dies, you get reborn. You either like become a soul in an afterlife that you choose, or you get reincarnated. And if you really try hard, you get your memories back when you reincarnate too. And it's like, how's a normal person supposed to react to now suddenly learning that not only do all the other gods exist, but also when you die, you're not actually dead. You become some sort of cog in this eternal machine of like soul power. And sometimes you come back and you forget everything that you were before, and you're just something else. And Godfrey talks a little bit about that and kind of gives his own perspective during that as well. As being like, well, people die, they're dead, like they're gone. Like, no, they're not gone. And then when asking why it was a greater good, like, oh yeah, the world has no ebb and flow anymore. Like all that everyone knows is like hope and salvation, but like people don't know all these other things, which Godfrey challenges immediately. And it's like, no, I've experienced these other things. Like these other things are there. It's like, well, then why is everyone so powerless? And then on that question, it was such a cool like microcosm of everyone in the party suddenly like showing where they stand, like on this kind of power. Because I think Morgus is like, who doesn't have power? And then Scylla is like, why do people need to have this power? And then Ziva was like, we don't need power, but things are more fun when you have power. And I think only Livy and Godfrey kind of stayed silent at that juncture. But that was just like a really cool moment where you kind of see where everyone's like thought process is, that kind of idea. And the response was more like the gods of those things don't have the power. So it's more Medusa asking, if these things exist, why aren't we getting power from it? Which I think is an interesting idea, which Livy is like, oh, it's because you need to be worshipped as well as feeling those things.
Yeah, which directly contradicts information from season 1 that was shared with Godfrey about how Nyx has their power. Yeah. Which I don't know if you picked up on.
I did pick up on that. So I was like, I was just letting Livy talk because I was like, Godfrey knew that wasn't entirely correct. So that's an interesting extra like part in this thing, because I don't think I was wrong in Godfrey saying that those things still exist, right? Because all those things do absolutely still exist. But now there's a big question: why aren't these gods getting power from that?
Yep.
Where someone like Nyx is still getting power from that. So. But that's one of those things that we still need enough time outside of this hut for everyone to sit down and like have a moment where we all just kind of stare into blank space and process everything that's happened.
Yeah.
And then talk to each other about all of this mess that we're suddenly in. All of these things that we suddenly know. And then in the final 10 minutes of the episode, just the biggest bomb is dropped about my Siera. And it's the most likely thing to be complete falsehood. Right? It's the most likely thing that's like, maybe this is so chaotic that it's just untrue. And Medusa's just fucking with us. Like, it's just a lie. This is just a way for her to try to get us on her side. But it might also be true, in which case that's also just fucking wild. So, spoiler alerts, if you haven't watched this episode,
we've spoiled so much already.
We've spoiled so much already. But this part, like, man, really.
Okay, go ahead.
I feel like everyone who's here like knows what they're getting into.
Oh yeah.
We just spoil everything.
Spoiled.
Because this is a way to watch the show without you could catch up on these.
Oh yeah.
Through all the episodes real quick.
Absolutely.
But sorry. We learned that my Siera's solution was to start over from scratch, and that Medusa turned my Siera to stone to end the war, which is contradictory to everything that we know about how the war ended. And then Medusa goes on to say that my Siera went to Kronos asking for help obliterating us, and she uses us, we'll kind of get into that, from the Underdark. And then he kicked my Siera out onto the material plane where she left a crater. She then went to the place of power outside the gate, and she was going to take people on a ship into space to create a new planet. And then the rest of the Underdark gods were like, we can't have that happen. And then banded together, and Medusa turned her to stone because Medusa didn't want to kill Myceria. So Medusa hoped that Myceria could still be reasoned with in the future. And then Arudi came home, and the episode ended after a quick game of hide and seek, which was pretty funny.
Yeah.
Whew.
Isn't it funny that the person who took such extreme measures as turning someone to stone to stop them from stealing everyone from the planet used the word hope to describe their reasoning for turning the goddess of hope and redemption to stone?
Sorry, can you go back to that? you faded away from
Did
the
my
mic a little
mic turn down again?
Might have.
It did.
I think maybe you just faded back to like you.
I said, isn't it funny how the god who took such extreme measures of turning someone to stone to stop them from stealing all the people from the planet used the word hope to describe the reasoning for why they turned her to stone instead of just killing her, when Myceria is the goddess of hope and redemption.
Oh, maybe there's a little bit of Myceria working in there.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's, part of that interaction. I don't know, but that is such a chaotic, like, through line to throw into this story. Like, what a wrench to just drop. Like, oh, you party of people who are going to wake up Myceria. Now do you want to wake up the person who is building a spaceship to take people to space? Create a new planet?
Mm-hmm.
Which, it was also not really explained why that would be a bad thing. And also in the initial explanation, Medusa said some people in a spaceship, not implying that all of mortals would be taken into a spaceship to create a new planet.
Mm-hmm.
There would be one. So there's like a lot of questions we didn't get to ask, like, why would that be a bad thing? And why didn't you want that to happen? Like, wouldn't that help you out here? You would have less friction. But man, that was a lot. So much happened.
What, of all the lore drops, the conversation with Medusa, did Godfrey get as much as he thought he was going to get? More or less?
Well, Godfrey thought this was going to be a conversation about him.
It was supposed to be. She even called it. She even said, "This isn't an interview, but I would like to get to know you better."
Which was pretty funny. But there was exactly one Godfrey question before it got immediately derailed.
Mm-hmm.
So Godfrey did his toxic shit and immediately turned this around to not be about him anymore at all, ever.
Yeah. The one answer we got, though, was really great.
Yeah, that one answer was good. Like, oh, how do you like Nyx? Like, oh, yeah. She killed me and a bunch of people, and I am morally against that, and the impression is terrible. Well, yeah, but but how about not that?
But if you put that to the side, what do you think about them?
Yeah. In which, listening back, Godfrey still doesn't answer that question.
Mm-mm.
He doesn't at all. He says, like, well, if you get rid of everything bad, then something that's left over could be somewhat redeemable.
And Medusa's just like, yeah.
Yep. And we moved on.
Yeah, I mean, it is really interesting in, like, as much as that was set up to be a one-on-one conversation, the fact that everyone was there, everyone got to ask their own small questions, which completely derailed the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
You'll have more time.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll have to see how this plays out and if any terrifying combat happens in the next couple episodes.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have to see. But
Spoiler.
I don't know if it's going to happen or not. Anything could happen. Anyway, a couple points I wanted to touch on, because things that I had come to figure out looking through it is that distinction of who the us versus them is. I think there was a big assumption that we had been hedging on, that it was old gods versus new gods.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there was even a point where Medusa had been saying that the gods are coming after us. And we assumed that meant new created gods.
Mm-hmm.
But if we look into like that list of new created gods, she said Myceria is included in that list. Myceria seemed to be in opposition to this whole group. So it's like siding with the other side. And you see a Rudy who's on this side instead of being on the side with the old gods. So it feels like that whole concept that we have of this is not entirely true, and that there's more nuance to what's happening here. I'm interested to see how that plays out. But my other question for you is kind of a DM question of running a domain where resting isn't possible.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we won't get to see kind of how this goes, but are you at all nervous about this? Have you, like, how is this playing out compared to how you thought it was going to play out so far? Maybe this isn't the right question for this particular monthly minutes, but
Knowing what happens next, Adam, is that what you're saying?
Yeah. It could be anything.
I think based on these episodes and even the after, it's playing out exactly as I thought it would. Yeah.
Just know, as a fellow DM and a player in a Sunday game where one of our house rules for one of the big campaigns we played was a complete change to how the resting system works, into like when you get short rests and long rests, it ends up playing out differently than we conceived, like every time we've played or tried to play with it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of like the inherent mechanics of D&D kind of rely on being able to get those kinds of rests in order to survive encounters, like at all. So I'm curious to see how this plays out. I'm interested to see how the rest of the story goes with that mechanic.
Yeah, I mean, I think we had the above table conversation of like me reminding that Medusa was inherently a healer before she became a god. And so that there's probably some ways to regain things if they are used. I will say, as a DM, I'm not leaving you high and dry. There are ways to alleviate and get back what is missed. That are essentially like, eat this mushroom, drink this tea, I bless you, like those kinds of things where it's like, okay, click the short rest button or take the long rest button kind of a thing.
You just have to work with Medusa to get them.
You just have to be clever about it.
So I've taken up so much of this talking time, just rambling about these episodes. How have you been feeling about them? Have there been any raising questions as a DM that you've been having? Is there anything that we've been doing that you're like, why are you doing that, party? Like, please just look at the things that I put in front of you.
No, not at all. We're not to the point where I'm having to cut out an entire section of an episode where I'm like, you look at your feet, god damn it.
It'd be so weird if that ever happened. What a weird thing to pull up out of nowhere.
That happened. And I cut it out and I felt bad about it later. No, I think I've learned a lot recently as a DM and grown a lot. And like, I feel like one of my DM strengths has always been the cross collaboration. And somehow I like put up some weird walls around that, and it feels really good to be back into I genuinely don't give a shit what you all do. I'm just gonna set the tools in front of you and set the stage, and I'm not gonna punish you if it's not the exact answer that I thought of. Like if someone thinks of something creative, or if someone even just says one thing that's like remotely viable, I'll try to build that into the story. You all inspire me and tell the story literally just as much as I spend time like prepping and writing, and that's my favorite type of D&D. And so I never want to be the DM that's like reading paragraphs aloud, and you know, I listen to those DMs. I think they're fantastic, but it's just not my style. Yeah.
But you are a little disappointed that we haven't looked at Narble yet.
Did you put it together while we were talking?
No, I still have no idea of the importance of Narble.
When you were talking to the satyr man about Narble, when Narble pulled his tail and ran away, he specifically said, "Oh, that's a bogle. They're common to the Feywild."
Yeah.
And then you heard Medusa say that there are tears all throughout the Nightmare Realm. 2 extra planar dimensions, and they think they got them all.
Yeah.
So there might be one that exists to the Feywild that y'all can sneak out of if you need to get out of here. Spoiler!
Godfrey has no idea. So lost.
You just huddle through a rift in time and space and end up in another horrible dimension of a maze.
It's basically just trading one nightmare for another, you know? Who knows where you show up in the Feywild and how long you're gonna be there.
Which might also be where the friendos that you make in episode 22 come from.
That would make sense.
That's me just starting to push that button a little bit more, of knowing that you all have a parachute if you choose to jump ship.
That makes sense, and that'll be good to know. And I don't know any of that. So
you and the 2 listeners don't know any of that.
Yeah. Well, one of those 2 listeners is me.
Okay, so. You and the 1 listener. Hi, 1 listener.
Appreciate you.
So yeah, I think my question for you, sir, is you mentioned how mind-blowing the soul stuff was. Did it trigger anything for Godfrey? I know there's a lot of stuff wrapped up in the mechanics we've agreed upon around Godfrey's backstory. I'm trying to like dance around it so you can say what you want to say, but just curious if there was any like tickles or
I will say that I don't think it stirred anything in Godfrey because there was no kind of check around learning those things, and also because Godfrey right now, like what was said doesn't apply to him. Like he doesn't have the context for why that would be important for him. But it is one of those things where it's world shattering for him, like as a healer and as a doctor. Maybe for him thinking about the people who he served with who died like alongside of him. It's a little comforting for him for like kind of the path that he took like as a healer, where he's like sometimes in his job he just like had to kill people, just put them out of their misery. That helps him with that aspect of it a little bit. But like it's one of those things where like, you know, been trying more and more when I'm playing Godfrey to be in the mindset of just like a dude who's been living in this world where there's only been one God and resurrection hasn't really been a possibility. To suddenly be talking one-on-one with gods and learning these things about the universe that are just like beyond what he could even comprehend. They're answers to questions that like people have just been pondering, and they're just right there, and it's true. You know?
Yeah. I love that you say that, like thinking about living in the world and what that would be like, because you gave Liz a bunch of kudos earlier in the episode, but I think giving her kudos around that, I think in this specific scenario is super merited as well. Less subtle or conscious role players would have just like been jumping on the option to ask Medusa questions. And Liz allowed Scylla to stay very stoic and very in character. And almost so much so she's still in disbelief that other gods really even exist, even when she's staring one right in the face. And this is the third one that she's met.
Yeah.
Fourth one that she's met. Fifth one that she's met. Sorry, went all the way back in my brain there. And that says so much about Scylla, but it also just like breathes so much into just like Liz's expertise in like telling a character story. So good.
Yeah. It's so curious to me because like what is it going to take?
Mm-hmm. I don't know the answer to that question.
To have that kind of like that's what I'm kind of waiting for. So I'm waiting to see what that's going to look like and why that hasn't come to pass, and like basically what's going to happen if and when we do meet my Siera.
Mm-hmm. Does Godfrey still want to go wake her up?
So Godfrey's current position is more complicated.
Mm-hmm.
It's just becoming more and more complicated for him. Because like going back to that idea, Godfrey's just a dude and a god has killed him and brought him back to life and said, okay, you're going to be my champion now. And even though the god's like, this is your choice, but eventually you will choose to do it, Godfrey's just a person and he's now like in consort with these gods, and like who is he to deny that? Who is he to say no to a deity coming and choosing him? And that's kind of the crossroads where my mind with him is at. Like he really, in his mind, he can't say no because this is a divine being. Like even if that option is there, it's kind of like a non-option option for him.
Yeah.
So interested to see how that plays out with the rest of the party when that conversation comes up about why the fuck he's a champion of Nyx and hasn't told anyone about it. Even though he has repeatedly told the party not to trust him. Every chance he gets the opportunity to. Like the party should know at this point.
Mm-hmm. But I also think that drop, I just completely missed the illusion stuff from Livy. It makes me really sad. Sometimes I'm just like so in DM brain that you miss some of this, just like the general chatter stuff at the table if it's not like super important, which sucks. But I'm really curious if you remember how Avis had Ziba react to that, because there's still this outstanding note from Godfrey to Ziba asking for help, asking for Ziba to join him, which also adds this whole other layer to the like, we want to get more support on Nyx's side that clearly Mary and Nyx are not aware of, you know, that Godfrey has already asked for Ziba's help.
Well, that's kind of an extra layer of Adam/Godfrey playing this game, because Godfrey gave that note when he's coming to this conclusion about Nyx, right? When he's coming to terms with the fact that this is a god, and like if this was my Siera, he would like he couldn't say no, and as far as he knows, this is a my Siera level person. So how could he refuse? The note that he sent Ziba is truly how Godfrey was feeling before committing himself to Nyx. And in some ways, I think it's Godfrey's hope that Ziba will take up that mantle, follow through with that in a way where he can assist while still being Nyx's champion in some regards.
Yeah. It's a big thing to put on a 12-year-old's shoulders.
It's a huge thing to put on a 12-year-old's shoulders, but you know, someone has to have it.
Yeah.
I guess he could have given that note to Livy.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's still like this weird outstanding assumption. Like the first impression of Godfrey of Livy, I think still lives in Godfrey's mind, where he's like, this person is the caretaker for this child and has only been feeding her blueberries and has been using her in arm wrestling matches to try to get money from people. So there's this like there's this inherent like distrust that he constantly has to keep getting over, even though he's already been over it before. Because it's like a first impression thing.
Yeah.
But like Livy standing between like Mary and Ziba, big, like Godfrey noticed that, and like he's time after time like proven himself to be past that like first impression.
Yeah. Aw, I'm having season 1 flashbacks.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay, fun question for you.
Sure.
If Adam entered a dream realm that his exit could only be through winning a competition, what kind of competition would you try to enter if there were infinite choices?
I was in a dream realm.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. What one would you enter?
This was like for your life. It's a hard question.
I don't think I'm better than anyone else at something like for my life.
Yeah, I don't really either. I feel like I would try to be really clever about it, but then just like my cleverness would fail me, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know, I can't even think of anything. Like, who can write my name the best in cursive? Well, me, because it's my name. But that's not even true. Then someone would come in with like a calligraphy pen and like make it gorgeous, you know?
Yeah, and then like look at your handwriting and mimic it perfectly, and
Yeah.
it's hard because like it would also be a dream realm, so I could say something like, "I will be the best to flirp the schnurkamack."
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Could be literally anything. That's why I thought it was funny when Ed was like, "Are there is there a list of competitions?" I'm like, "No." And then when I said that, I realized that maybe you all thought I was just being a dick, but I was just like, "It's whatever you want. Like we're building this together."
Yeah. I realized that, but it would have also been kind of helpful for like, oh, there's this competition, and this competition, and this competition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That should have also been like the first red flag of like, it doesn't matter what competition it is because it's a fucking trap. We shouldn't enter it.
It's a trap. A trappe. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, we're a little over time, but it's been great chatting. You want to do the outs, or do you want me to do the outs?
I think you should do the outs because I really failed on the intro.
Okay. Thank you all for tuning in. This has been Monthly Minutes, and we talked about episode 19, 20, and 21. 22 comes out next week, and I hope you watch it. Listen to it, or share it with your friends, or talk to someone about it. Maybe the person at the cash register, or the coffee bar who asks how your day's going. Spread the good word of my Siera and Utopia. Join our Discord server. Feel free to invest in Ko-Fi. Those are the best ways to support us. And I've been Siera, aka Mystic, she, any pronouns. I'm the creative director and owner / founder of Autumn Studio. And I'm trying to make this not sound like I've done it a million times, but I have. So it kind of just comes out as like a all of that said, I genuinely appreciate all of you. And I hope...
You gotta add to those accolades that you're also an author now.
Oh no, I am an author now.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Pick up her book.
Book! It's called We May Not All Be Heroes. You can find it wherever you like to get your books. What about you, sir?
I've been Adam. I play Godfrey on the podcast. He, him, go by Fondue Rage at Fondue Rage on socials. And yeah. I'm also in Autumn Moon Studios.
What? You're also in Autumn Moon Studios?
I think so.
Yes, you are. There's a link to the book in the doobly-doop and our Discord and our Ko-Fi. We very much appreciate you. And we'll see you all around. Bye!
Good night. Thank you. Goodbye. Goodbye. Goodbye.